I'm Ali Jackson-Jolley. I am here at the Forbes BLK Summit with Tawan Davis, who is the CEO of Steinbridge. Welcome, Tawan.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have you here, where you just announced $100 million investment in HBCUs to help them activate underutilized property.
Sure.
Can you tell me why this is where, you could have donated, you could have made this investment in a lot of different places. Why HBCUs and why in the real estate?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And we're excited about the chance to share and to talk about our work. So Steinbridge is a real estate investment and asset management and development company. Our focus is impact real estate investing. And so our goal is to try to find areas of impact. And we thought that working with historically Black colleges, universities, and other institutions to help them activate their real estate is a humongous impact investment opportunity. The reality is that African American people, this is not just an American problem. This is actually a global problem. That there's a sustained economic disadvantage to people of African descent, particularly in the Western Hemisphere. We weren't the first people to come to this part of the world. In fact, 200 years before Africans came to Virginia, the Portuguese were taking them to Brazil. And that sustained economic disadvantage that exists for us also exists for Black people around the world. There is a bright light there, and one of the bright lights in that history has been the historically Black college and university. And so when we were going through thinking about how to really impact communities, how to provide opportunities, where to invest, where we can impact institutions and individuals, I thought about a sermon by Adam Clayton Powell. He preached a sermon in 1968 called "What's in Your Hand?" And in that sermon, he talks about the fact that, David had a slingshot and some rocks. He didn't need the huge armor. He talked about the fact that, Moses was stressed out at the Red Sea, and God asked him, "What's in your hand?" "You've got a rod, the same rod you used in Egypt." And so often I feel like the universe and God is asking us, when we face these challenges, when we look at the African American community and the continued economic disadvantage, what do you have? What's in your hand that you can activate where you can make the difference? One of the primary areas to start was with historically Black colleges and universities.
Yeah, so what does that mean for those of us? I think many of us know that HBCUs have been historically underfunded.
Right.
And yet, to your point, I just read a stat from the United Negro College Fund that said HBCUs are outperforming traditional universities in terms of providing social mobility. So actually giving someone a degree that not only makes them smarter,
Right.
makes them do better. But when you are choosing to invest in the real estate, how does that help for those of us that aren't in the real estate?
That's a fair question. So basically, Reconstruction failed after the Civil War. One of the few bright spots that came out of the Reconstruction period was the historically Black college and university, the land grant and the non-land grant colleges, public and private. And so our goal is to help them to identify assets that they already own and activate those assets to economically productive uses. We found that can create anywhere from a 5 to a 30% increase in their endowment by having these, instead of selling these homes, these properties, instead of selling these underutilized assets, to contribute them to economically productive uses. They can create affordable housing, they can create, and this is not a student housing opportunity. They have student housing, but these are things that they can use to create revenue, to create value to the university, and we can partner with them to do that. Often, not only do they not have the capital available, but many times they don't have the personnel or the human power to execute on the opportunities that are ahead of them. So we try to help them identify those and to move forward with those opportunities.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. You are inviting HBCUs to almost create a brand new revenue stream that many of them aren't thinking about.
That's exactly right.
So separate from education.
That's exactly right.
So, and then something by which they'll be able to reinvest in themselves.
That's exactly right. And we're doing that with HBCUs. We're also doing it with some churches. We're doing it with other nonprofit institutions that have the land but don't have the other resources necessary to move from this level of economic reality to the next. That impacts them, it helps them, it strengthens them, but it also impacts the people that they serve. And so that's really the opportunity that exists for us.
Okay, and I read something that you've said, which is that you believe that real estate is the key. Getting more Black people involved in real estate is the key, or a key, to creating better, more empowered communities.
Sure. Absolutely.
Can you explain to me what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the statistics I refer to is that 40 acres and a mule from 1865, it was $10 an acre, give or take. Those $10, if you adjust for inflation and adjust for changes in currency, would be worth about $168,000 today. Well, the gap in median income, or the median net worth, between African American people and non-African American people is $165,000. Most of that gap could have been resolved by ownership of real estate, And so I think there exists an opportunity for us to go back to some basic ideas and create wealth from that. I don't come from a wealthy family. My family were slaves in Mississippi, and then after the Civil War, we became sharecroppers in Arkansas. And my great-grandmother, I knew my great-great-grandmother, who was born in the 1890s. Her parents were born as slaves. My great-great-grandmother, they all moved from Arkansas to the Northwest, to Oregon. And in Oregon, they basically bought 4 or 5 houses apiece, my great-grandmother and her sisters. And they would go down to Arkansas and bring people from Arkansas to Oregon during the Great Migration. They built this community that basically helped get those Southerners out of the terrible conditions that they lived in the South and replaced them and repositioned them in Oregon for a brighter opportunity. That's my family's history. Now, the challenge of that was by that time I came along, much of that had deteriorated. You had the riots in the 1960s. You had drugs in the 70s. You had gang violence in the 80s and 90s. And so by the time I came along, a lot of that community was decimated. We were on Section 8 for quite some time as a youngster. But I still saw the opportunity. Even in my hometown now, the neighborhood I grew up in has been totally gentrified. The neighborhood my grandparents built doesn't exist anymore. And so I thought that there was a real opportunity for real estate in particular to be a catalyst for change, like it was contemplated quite some time ago.
Well, let me ask you this, because I'm so glad that you talked about your origin story, because I do think it's so fascinating and hopefully inspirational for other Black entrepreneurs and business professionals who are thinking about owning their own destiny, right? But something I think a lot about is my parents are teachers. And because of that, I've always had a voice. I've always known how to use my voice, whether it's written or verbal. But one thing I didn't know until much later in my life was about things like investing in real estate and stock and all of those things. And I think a lot about this because I think sometimes it's hard to even know what you don't know how to do. So how did you, first of all, how old were you when you decided that you were going to be an investor?
It's interesting. I knew at 15 that I didn't want to be poor. That was really the impetus. My mother's a remarkable woman. She's actually here with us today. She's a remarkable woman. My mother raised us by herself. My mother worked 2 and 3 jobs at a time. She worked as an assistant for the principal of one of the middle schools. She worked at Standard Insurance Company. And at nighttime, she worked at JCPenney, helping people check their stuff out, right? And I saw the challenge of her commitment and her faith in what we could do, what we could become. And so at about 15 years old, I thought, you know what? Life doesn't have to be like this. There have to be other opportunities. And I think that at that point, I began to really think about, well, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for the people around me? And I was blessed with a remarkable series of opportunities. I got a great education. And then after that, I worked on Wall Street. After I worked on Wall Street, I went to grad school, and then I went to business school, and then went back to investing in real estate. I then worked for Mayor Bloomberg in the Economic Development Corporation, helping to rebuild New York City after September 11th. And then after that, I was president of a real estate development company. So I feel like by the time I got into my early to mid 30s, I had such a remarkable series of opportunities. For me, this is as much of a calling as it is a job. It's as much of a calling. You know, I've been asked to run for Congress before. My father and grandfather were ministers, and for 30 plus 40 years, I could have been a preacher. But for me, this is my opportunity to combine the ideas of economic progress and economic opportunity with the message of hope and possibility for people of color in this country.
So let me ask you final question, because I know you and I share, after having talked to you, our passion, and my passion for raising the next generation has to do around journalism and newsrooms.
Sure.
Yours is around, and generational wealth, because otherwise I wouldn't be at Forbes.
Right.
Yours is around, creating impact investing.
Sure.
Do you think about how to educate that next generation of Black students, let's say the students at, whether they're at HBCUs or elsewhere, that haven't thought about real estate investment, and may not have the luck of working for, and I don't think it was luck, by the way, I think there's a lot of hard work in there, but let's just call it luck. Luck of working for Bloomberg, luck of finding a great job on Wall Street, where I can imagine a lot of your colleagues thought about real estate investing. How do you get that next generation to know that real estate investing can be for them?
I mean, one of the reasons why we're working with colleges and universities is to exactly create that path. And my path is unique. I went to Georgetown for undergrad, and then I worked at Goldman Sachs. Then I got a degree in sociology from Oxford University in the UK. Then I went to Harvard Business School. And then I went and worked for one of the most powerful mayors in the city, in the history of the city. And then I was at a real estate development firm and a large institutional real estate firm. There was a point in my life where, my family was at or around the poverty line. So to get from there to today is statistically unlikely. And so my message to young people is walk with me, right? What is the old civil rights song, walk together, children, don't you get weary. And so for me, it's not just about what I say, but it's about what I do. And this is why we're partnering with HBCUs. I'm starting a foundation, and we'll announce kind of the work of that foundation over the next few months to do exactly that, to help educate young people in the possibilities that exist for the life that they have today and the life that they want to live.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing your story and for sharing your announcement about that investment. I'll keep an eye on everything that you are able to do through HBCUs. I'm sure I'll.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's good to meet you. Spend some time with you. Thank you.